I'm Walt Thiessen, the Crypto Skeptic. Let's talk crypto. And we're back with another special segment here on LOA today, the Crypto Skeptic. That's me, yours truly. And for my regular followers, yes, I'm back. Louise and I had a great vacation, and we are rested and just raring to go with a new week worth of programs. And we're getting it started today with Sam Kamani, who is from down under, actually. He's from the other side of the planet. And he's tuning in today and joining us to talk a little bit about not just cryptocurrencies, but also about blockchain in general. And of course, we've talked about that a little bit here on the program, so listeners have some idea of what that's about. Sam, we're going to do a lot of basic talk because while I'm pretty well versed in it, most of my listeners aren't. So this is going to be a little bit on the beginner level, but we're also going to talk about the work that you do, because you do some very interesting work using the same kind of software that goes into cryptocurrencies, but applied for completely different applications. And that's something that we haven't really explored a lot. So first of all, thank you for joining me on the program. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you. How are you?
Doing fine. Thank you.
Yes.
And let's talk a little bit about who you are and where you're from, because you have a rather fascinating background.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sam Kamani, and last sort of 20 years I've been based mostly in New Zealand. But before that, I'm originally from India. I grew up in India. I went to New Zealand to do some of my university, and then just stayed here, and then also, of course, worked in other parts of the world. Most of my life, I worked in tech startups. First one was in e-commerce. After that, I moved to esports because I've been a gamer most of my life. And with that, I worked in Bay Area or near San Francisco for a short time. Then that company got acquired. And then I wrote books on tech startups, like the 30-day startup and one more book. And so I wrote books, spoke at events. I still speak at podcasts, like 2 or 3 different podcasts a week these days.
Good for you.
Yes, a few. I do enjoy meeting people from all walks of life, and this is a great way. The whole podcasting thing for me, I'm not as early as you, but it started for me in 2020 when I could no longer fly around easily around the world and go to conferences, meet people, talk with people. So that was the second best thing. So I thought, okay, let's go podcasting. And it's not the second best thing; it is the best thing ever. You don't have to, stand in the queues and go through the what you call the security and anything. We didn't have any hassle, and I could have such a fantastic conversation with you. So it's a win-win in every way.
I agree. I mean, personally, the reason I even started had nothing to do with why I've continued to do podcasts. Why I've continued to do it is I found that I loved it, which was a shock. I mean, really, that
Yes.
was not what I expected at all, but it's freaking fun. I mean, it's just a blast. That's why I've been doing
It
it for the last
is.
10 years.
And it is so hard to have a meaningful conversation with someone in an event, like a summit or a
Yes.
conference or a seminar, whatever you call it. You go there to just listen to the main speaker, but we are not having meaningful conversation. And
Right.
this way, I get to have a meaningful conversation, get an insight onto the other person. Every person I talk with is in a different part of the world, and I get such a broad point of view. That
Yes.
I wouldn't get otherwise. So I love it. So that's why I've continued. And that's why I started my own podcast 2 years ago. I ran it for a couple of years, and then I moved to Web3 because pretty much, I'm sure we'll talk about it, that all of my friends and everyone in the technology space was moving to Web3. And I always dabbled a little bit into blockchain, but I've been a very big skeptic for most of my life. I was there even I tried to um, install like a miner onto my computer, and I had all sorts of issues, and Bitcoin miner, and that, like, this is so user unfriendly that that no one is going to use this stuff. That's what I used to think, that it is, you have to jump so many hoops. You can't just set up a miner for Bitcoin, even back in the day or now or anytime. You either need a lot of capital, you need a lot of know-how, and I was like, oh, this is too complex. How do I expect like a man on the street to be using this? But over time, things have changed, and over time my views have changed as well, or some of my views have changed, some still remain.
Well,
So
I'm
yeah,
glad that you're a
that's
skeptic. I mean, because I'm a skeptic too, as you know, the program outlines. And I think it's smart to be a skeptic, especially with something that's as relatively new and relatively untried as a currency as Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies are. So thank you for being a skeptic. That's what I would like to say.
yes, I'm skeptic, but that does not mean that I do not study what is
Sure.
going on in the market. Just like everyone was a skeptic when the first stock market in Amsterdam or in Netherlands was born, with the bonds being issued by the East India Company and stuff, and the first sort of publicly traded equity
Oh, yeah.
giving them, and there were booms and busts even with their stock.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this is bound to happen, but the innovation continues from there on, and amazing things are built, like because like what has been the impact of stock markets all around the world, 190 countries, hundreds of stock markets, how many companies they have fueled that have continued because they got funding from stock market, how many
Mhm.
employees those companies have,
Sure.
hundreds of millions if not billions, so it's like the impact could be massive. So that's why, even though there are teething issues in the early days, we are still in very early days. The technology is like what, 12 years old at that.
Right.
Ethereum is the second biggest, is 7 years old. So it's like we are in such early days that the baby is still just not even learning to walk, or let alone talk and be a productive member of the society.
I'm
That's
pretty sure Bitcoin is actually 14 years old, which makes it a troublesome teenager. But
Yes, yes,
I think your point is
exactly
still
right.
valid.
Yeah. So we have still a way to go before it's a 32-year-old working a stable job
Right.
on and yeah, providing money for the family of five. So so it's still a while to go.
Just a ways, yes. And you actually are involved in a side of this whole blockchain thing that
Yes.
I think has a lot of promise. I mean, the currency part, I'm still really skeptical about. We were chatting before we got started, and you thought maybe as many as 20 currencies might survive. I think you're wildly optimistic. I'll be surprised if any of them survive. But that's another topic. Well, we can get into
Yes.
that one a little later. Right now, though, I want to get into what you're doing because you mentioned Web3.
Sure.
I think
Yes.
most people have at least heard the term somewhere along the line. That some have
Yes.
there are a few perhaps who have also heard Web 2.0. They don't really know
Yes.
what it is, but why don't we start by just defining some terminology here? What is Web
Okay.
2.0? What is Web 3.0?
Sure. Sure. So I'll just finish my first answer to first question, and that is that I do two things at the moment. After all my sort of history, I run a podcast called the Web3 Podcast, and then the other thing I do is I work for a company called Moonstream.to, where we build sort of building blocks for Web3 games. And so now coming back to what is Web3 and how is it different to Web2. So let's look at just internet, how it has been evolved. All these web 2, web 3, all these terms are made up terms given by people to define an era. That's how I see it, and there will be more in future as time goes on. But if you look at like the progress of internet back in late 90s, or mid 90s and all that, you could go to websites, you could go to blogs, you could read websites, you could write blogs. So it was just sort of read and write. That was about it. There was nothing much you can do. Then came the mid 2000s, like 2004 to 2015, you can say. There was the growth of all the social media companies, whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, or like on and on and on, like so many. And what it added was the ability to share other people's content, ability to edit, ability to add your thoughts to other people's sort of content or comments in form of comments and all that. So that was the era of sort of, you can say, social media, mobile phones. That's what happened in web 2. However, what happens is when you're using Facebook or Instagram, you don't own any part of it. You are just part of the product. You are building wealth for Mr. Zuckerberg, or you're building wealth for someone else. You're building wealth for Microsoft by using LinkedIn. So It's like, why should you put so many hours of work every day updating your status, updating your things, pushing, peddling things on the platform, and not get value, adding value to the platform? Because if no one's on the platform's worth $0, exactly $0, probably even less because they have so many expenses.
Yeah, right.
um, so um, so the fact is that in Web3 it takes it to one step further. It's not only read, write, share, but also own. So the more you use the platform, the more you get paid by the platform in their own tokens, and you have a voice in how the platform is run. You have a share in the share of the platform. So you can see it's a different way of funding, and a lot of these Web3 companies are often not or listed on the public stock markets unless they are a centralized company. But they have a token, they give out people tokens, and then the more you use the platform, the more you earn tokens. So of course there is a inflationary model inside built in it. So they need economists now. There is a new job that it's created. All these Web3 companies, Web3 games, they need an economist to manage the internal economy of their tokens, their own currency, because they're adding a currency to it.
So,
So
so let's take a breath here because we're touching on something that's pretty important. We're talking about how companies who previously perhaps would have been under the social media model are now moving into a new model where they take it a step further, and they are this is really strange to say, they are paying you for your content using
yes,
currency that they create, and that
yes,
when they initially create it has zero value with the hope that it's actually going to acquire value over time, because this is where it gets mind bending. They are
yes,
paying you to create the content using basically a blank check on an overdrawn account. That's really what it amounts to here, in the hope that somehow they'll be able to get some money into that account so that it's actually worth something someday. And
yes,
and
yes.
there is some reason to believe that that can work. It's just kind of it takes a little bit of bending your mind to get around that
Yeah,
concept. It's a strange concept.
it's not only social media companies. Now that principle could apply to any company. It could apply, I mean, this is hypothetically speaking. Now it could apply to a plumbing company. The more plumbings you get fixed, it'll pay you in tokens, kind
Well,
of its
that'll be really
points.
fun. 5,000 plumbers each issuing their own currency. That's going to be interesting. That's going to be like
Or
coupons.
yeah, it is, you said it is like
It
coupons.
is.
So it is exactly like that. So not 5,000, it would be overall, um like a, as it happens in US, it would be a giant company issuing, and all these plumbers will be underneath that, or there'll be two or three big ones like AT&T, and like, few big ones, like you have for phone. And then so every time you subscribe, you get some service from them, you get points. Then every time you recommend that plumber, you get some more points. So the point system already works, already is there, whether it's through credit cards or whether it's to that. So that is the same system, point
Well,
system.
well, there
So
is
you
one
get
difference though.
points.
There's a
Yes,
difference, of course. The difference is now they're saying that the points are actually worth something. Before, the points were more like brownie points. They didn't really count for anything. But now
you
they're saying
can.
they actually count for something.
Yeah, you can buy and sell in some airlines, and some points, some sort of air miles or whatever you call them. They can be your hotel, like hotel chain points or things like that. You can sometimes sell their points, or you can buy the points. And that's why how some people who hack the travel sort of a thing, how some
Mhm.
people often say that I traveled around the world for $500, around the world ticket instead of $6,000, because I bought the points for $500 on the from somewhere, from the point provider or whoever that is, Sky Miles or Air Miles or whoever. And then they use those points to book hotel reservation, and they just have to top up the little bit of $50 of booking fees or something. So people do that already in the regular world.
I love that.
So
They're paying you in these cryptocurrencies, but they're charging you dollars for the fees. I love that part.
um who's that? Like, oh, that's, I was talking about the points. That I'm not talking
Yeah.
about cryptocurrencies, I'm talking about the points.
Well,
That's the existing
but
Web2
a point is
system.
basically the
Yes,
point system is basically the same thing as a cryptocurrency in the context of what we're talking about here. It's an invented currency. It may not
yes,
necessarily be in blockchain form, but it falls into the same general rubric. It's a currency that was invented by a company.
yes, yes, absolutely. There are few differences. We would go into it. And just like how every currency in the world is an invented currency by a government or by a king or a queen or
Mhm.
a or by a corporate. The points are currencies invented by a corporate. The US dollar, and just like back in the days, US had more than $1, and something that we were saying, that only one survived and everyone else other dollars
Mhm.
died. There was there's greenback now, but there used to be a silverback, and the South used to
Yeah.
use the silverback,
Yeah.
and that died. And I am originally born and brought up in India. India is When India got its independence from the British, it was 536 different states or districts. A lot
Mhm.
of them had their own currencies.
Mhm.
All the kings and
Sure.
princes, all the princely states. And in fact, if you have some of these antique dollars, I mean rupees, or antique, whatever their currency is called, I don't know because there's so many. um it would be worth quite a lot in the antique market, just because they were like minted real coins and stuff, and some were in gold, some were in copper, all that stuff.
Sure.
But anyway, I still have some, like, from my hometown, because my grandparents or whoever saved those. Because
I
every
love it.
town had its own currency, and because they
Mm.
had the king, they had the castle, they had, because India is so old. It's like, eventually all of them merged into one. All of them um, combined their currencies into one Indian rupees. And so most of the currencies died. All the 535 died. Out of 536, one is surviving. So, and that is something we will see consolidation even in the crypto markets and stuff. There is one very important distinction I'll tell you about, like the regular currencies, or the points made by corporates, or the coupons made by small companies, and the blockchain based token system. Um, but continuing that discussion about how we were talking about that there used to be hundreds of car companies in US, and now three or four survived. So there would be a very big consolidation, and we are seeing that right now. Just overnight yesterday, a few couple of them died, and every
Mhm.
time they'll die, it will be painful for a lot of people.
Yeah, well,
So
it's an important point. It's a very important point because literally there are over $1.5 trillion invested in cryptocurrencies right now. Actually,
not
well,
anymore.
well,
1
yeah,
trillion
well,
now,
it
1
was at
trillion.
one point. It's now shrunk.
And I have no idea what it will be by the time this podcast comes out, unless this is
Right.
live.
They're losing value as we speak. I mean, it's kinda
Yes.
scary.
So I need to keep
But there's another
yes.
piece to that too. A lot of people have invested in these. Millions of people have invested in
Yes.
these. Millions of people are gonna get pretty badly hurt. And while I can certainly take the point of view that says, well, they knew what they were getting into. They were risking something where they could lose everything. They could lose their shirts on, and that's true. I keep coming back to the point of psychology. And the reason I
Yes.
come back to the point of psychology is that all money is money only because people believe that it's money.
It is true. It is a story. Money is a story. And whether that story lives on a blockchain, or in a rule book in government, or in the written sort of law in a corporate, in some of point system.
Yeah.
They say, like, Starbucks is one of the biggest banks in the world, because of how much how much their points and stuff are worth, and how much they give out and stuff
But
when
my
people
point is,
load.
if you have
Yes.
millions and millions and millions of people losing their shirts in cryptocurrencies, that's going to have a very negative effect on any hope that any cryptocurrency has for gaining massive acceptance. Because you get enough of those stories going, and people will, I mean, have already been shying away from cryptocurrency. It's not like everybody jumped in and said, okay, hey, let's get rid of the fiats. We're going to join the cryptocurrency movement. No, that's not the way it's gone at all. And now we're putting in more reason, not we, but now this whole marketplace is putting in a whole bunch more, millions and millions of more reasons not to trust cryptocurrencies. So now we're
Yes.
really getting to what I consider to be the foundation of why I am a complete skeptic when it comes to cryptocurrency, because let's be honest, cryptocurrencies have been shooting themselves in the foot for the last 14 years. They have all this promise. I remember when Bitcoin came out. I was one of the few who actually knew what it was. Unlike you, I didn't bother to try to mine. I kind of wish I had, but
No,
I
it
didn't bother
it was an unsuccessful attempt, so you are no better than me.
Well,
Or
yeah,
I was no better than you.
exactly. Yeah. But
We are
the
the
point
same.
is, I knew what it was. I knew how it worked. I knew what the theory was behind it. And I knew that most of it was a lie. Most of the claims they made about it simply were not true. And I
Like
thought
which
to
ones?
myself,
I would love to know.
what happens if you keep telling people, making promises to people that you don't keep, and the record just keeps piling up? Oh, they were wrong about that. Oh, they were wrong about that. Oh, they were wrong about that. How does that currency ever gain traction?
It, yeah, I
That's
have.
the question. I don't see how it
Yes, yes. So
happens.
I would love to know which ones were they wrong about? Because I mean, just out of
Oh
curiosity,
God.
which ones? Because you've been there
Well, there are a
probably.
number of them. I mean, one of the first ones they promised you was that it was going to be secure,
Yes.
unhackable.
Yeah. So let me tell
You
you
know,
this. Yeah. Let me tell you this. There is a some like this person. I mean, this is just just as an example. He buys a tank. Now that tank is super secure. No one can break into it once you have logged it in. The only way to get in is the if you need to have the key to get in, and that is the reality of blockchain. That is that tank is the Bitcoin, or your cryptocurrency in Ethereum or whatever.
except
The
that it's
mo-
also turned out that it's not been true.
so
Because
the easiest,
we already have instances of people losing their investment in Bitcoin, the
oh
currency that was supposed to be the perfectly safe currency, and all of a sudden, oh, whoop, there that go. And it was also supposed to protect you too. It was supposed to protect your identity till the CIA came along and proved that, whoop, oh, it doesn't really actually work that way.
no, in fact it is very transparent. It's not the
Yeah.
the
But
so
that
what
was
I'm
one of the
saying is,
promises.
yes,
That was a big part of the sales pitch. But
yes,
let's go back to where the whole thing came from. Bitcoin came out of what I will generically call the libertarian movement, a movement that I knew well because
yes,
I was a libertarian. So that's
yeah.
why I knew about it. And that movement was all about separating and creating a new currency that was separate from the evil fiat dollar, the government created dollar. That's what drove the whole thing. And what was going to make it absolutely ironclad was that there was nothing the government could do about it. There was nothing that anyone else could do about it. It was going to be so completely decentralized that no one could ever hack it. No one could ever steal your money. It was all perfectly safe. And every one of those claims turned out to be BS. Every one.
So
And I knew
okay,
that
okay.
back then. I knew then they had to be BS. They couldn't possibly be true.
Yeah, okay. So not that I own Bitcoin. Okay. First of all, a
I
disclaimer.
think we've established neither one of us do.
Yeah. So the thing is, I've only invested in one thing, and that is learning more and my own experiences and
Great,
gaining knowledge. So that's what I,
great
because
thing to invest in. I love that.
that is a thing that no thief can steal and no one can tax, or
That's
that's the
right.
most libertarian thing you can invest in.
I agree. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So but having said that, the thing is that I have seen being part of the ecosystem and community where most of the hacks happen in the Bitcoin world, are people convincing people to give them the keys. That could be in the form of phishing, that could be in the form of, because to hack Bitcoin and take away all the money that say a sovereign fund holds or something, it is very hard to hack Bitcoin. You need an extremely large amount of resource, so it does not
Right, but
happen. What
it's
what
also very
happens?
hard. It's also almost impossible to hack an SSL connection,
Yes,
which is basically that it's a secured connection, an encrypted connection that prevents somebody from seeing what you're doing when you're doing a transaction online. The problem is that's not where hackers go. That's not where the
that's not what
thieves
hackers,
go in order to steal. The
they
last thing
go
they're going
fishing.
after is the encryption. They don't care
Yeah.
about the encryption. That's unimportant to
So
them.
yeah, let me tell you the biggest or the easiest scam that people are doing in the NFT world. They go to a Discord server, they join a Discord server as being a participant, community member, whatever, or for an NFT project. And then
And by the
they
way, for people who don't know, Discord is kind of like its own little social media channel. It's usually used
yes,
by programmers. It's also used by other people in other fields too.
gamers. It started with gamers.
Gamers, it's
Yeah,
big in the gaming industry. So it's basically a
yes,
chat channel. So for people who don't know
chat
what
channel.
Discord
Yeah.
is, that's what it is. Yeah.
And so a lot of these projects, they live on Discord. So say you've got issues with your NFT or something, you go and ask for support in the company's Discord channel that, hey, my NFT is not behaving, it's not
Mhm.
downloading, it's not showing correctly. I bought this, but it's showing, in whatever customer support you need, you go to their NFTs. But then there are bad actors in that
Yeah.
Discord server that even the server might not know that some of their users are bad people. And what they will do is that someone's asked for, say you asked for some support, that, hey, can you please help me and all this, then I will send you a link, and I will change my name when I connect with you, to look like as if I belong to the XYZ server or whatever, XYZ NFT project or whatever, as if I'm part of the team. And then I'll send you a page that I would say, hey, why don't you log in here and enter your NFT details, and then the problem will be sorted. Now that page will be designed. It's called phishing. That used to happen in emails in back 1990s as well.
It still
They'll send
happens.
you. It still happens. They send
Yeah.
you a page that looks
Oh,
like the
sure.
bank's login, and then they make you log in using your digital wallet. And that's the easiest way. They get them to give their keys instead of hacking the digital wallet or anything,
Yeah,
and
they
they
don't
just
need
get the
to.
keys, and they don't need to, and they clean out. And every single day, millions of dollars of NFTs are stolen,
And
and
not just NFTs, all
cryptocurrency is
kinds of stuff
stolen.
is stolen. All currencies, I mean,
Yes.
the thievery is just massive and should not
Yeah.
be underestimated.
Yeah. So this is the most common thing. It's called phishing, and this is the most common thing that happens on in the in the crypto world.
Mhm.
um, so you don't need to hack the whole Bitcoin's network. You just convince someone to give you their keys, and that's
Oh,
the easiest
I
way.
think that's
And
true.
then
But here's the
you got the
point.
tank, and
Here's
then
the
you
key
got the tank, and then no one can come and get it back from you. That's it.
but here's the key point. The average
Yes.
person can't tell the difference.
Yeah, they
The average
can't.
all the average person knows is that their money is gone. So
Yes.
the fine distinction about whether or not they actually broke into the blockchain or not really doesn't matter to the
Doesn't
average person.
matter.
The average
Yeah.
person doesn't give a crap about that. All they care about is my money safe?
Safe. Yeah. 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 So the other thing is that in a centralized um, sort of an entity, you could go back to the company. You can go back to your bank that, hey, someone's hacked in my bank account. Can you please block my credit cards? Can you do this? I have my credit card stolen, or my now you can't go to someone. There is no central entity that my Bitcoin keys are stolen. Can you please block
That's
my
right. Oh,
Bitcoin?
yeah.
That's it. That's it. That's
That's the
gone.
whole point. It's decentralized. There's
No,
no
but
central authority to go to.
yeah, that is the point of libertarianism, that you are
Yeah.
responsible for your own assets. And if
Yeah.
someone comes and steals you with a bigger gun, that's it. With a bigger stick, you're stuffed. You wanted to be libertarian. This is the cost of being a libertarian.
Well, but I
Unfortunately,
also,
that's
I
a
mean, this is actually one reason why I don't consider myself a libertarian anymore, because my
yes.
fellow libertarians refuse to face reality.
Yeah.
The realities are many, and they include the fact that most people are not interested in philosophical stuff. They're not interested in the philosophy of freedom as libertarians lay it out. And if you want any proof of that, as if proof is needed, just look at the vote totals. It's pretty clear libertarianism is not gaining any traction in the electoral cycle. So I think we can
Yes.
pretty much eliminate the whole idea that philosophy is actually driving the overall marketplace. It's not. Okay, so if it's not
Yeah.
driving the marketplace, then what is driving the marketplace? And quite honestly, what is driving the marketplace, particularly where currencies are concerned, cryptocurrencies are concerned, is craziness. It's just it's the Holland tulips. It's just, let's just go
Oh,
crazy with the
okay.
markets and
Okay.
speculate like crazy. That's what's actually driving the whole thing right now.
Okay, can I show you a different perspective? I mean, not that I like to I'd love I love to talk about. So when someone is like really into crypto, I talk exactly like how what you say. But I do see both sides of the picture. Let's look at the Holland's tulip mania. A few hundred people got really badly burnt. But when that tulip mania happened, when the boom and bust cycles were happening with the tulips, everyday prices were going massively up, massively down, all that, it attracted so much talent to the sort of the flower cultivation industry
Sure.
in Holland. And even to this day, after 200-250 years, Holland controls 60% of
Oh,
the world's
complete.
flower trade.
I
So
completely agree. Yeah,
so it
all kinds of really great stuff comes out of really bad situations. And
yes,
that's the theme that
so
we talked about a
it's
lot on the
it's
show.
not it's not bad situations. All types of things comes out of boom and bust type of things.
Yeah,
Whenever
sure.
this sort of fluctuation happens, it sucks up all the talent and it becomes the center of that industry.
I
And
agree.
same thing happened in the early 2000, 2001, the dot-com bubble burst. I think you would remember that dot-com
Oh,
bubble
yes.
burst. And now, even to this date, after 20 years, 60-70% of all the unicorn startups come out of just that one very small San Francisco area. That and trillions of dollars of value has been created globally, and tens of millions of people have been hired by these tech companies all around the world. Most of them are still funded in that small, like a 15-20 mile radius. And that is because of that boom and bust, because it sucked up all
It's
the
true.
smartest people, and that is throughout the history. Whenever
Yeah,
there is the center of civilization, whether it was New York for finance, which it still does suck in so much value, and
sure.
that's why New York, parts of New York are so wealthy, and it has
Mhm.
been the center of sort of civilization in our time in the last 50, 60
Sure.
years, because it was
Yeah,
the financial. And same thing happened whether it was Istanbul or Constantinople or Athens, Greece. All the learned people, all the most educated people, all the wealthiest people, all the artists, all the poets, all the philosophers would gather together and make it the center of. When you collect a large number of smart people, magic happens. And the same thing is happening with Web3. All the smartest of the developers, 20, 30,000 of them out of the tens of millions, the smartest of them have moved to Web3 to build on, because the first thing is that it is permissionless, and there is innovation of money. When innovation of money came around, it completely changed our world. When people could raise money through public markets, when you didn't have to be from a nobleman's family, it completely changed. And this is now being put on steroids in the Web3 world.
mhm.
So people are able to raise money and build things that they weren't able to. And blockchain is nothing more than just a database, just a fancy way of saying database. It's a, and
Right, good point.
and
It's a very good
every
point.
yeah, and everything that we use is stored in a database. That even your account on StreamYard, on YouTube, everything, all the data you see in the world is stored in a database.
Right.
This is just another way of storing database. So it is likely to touch nearly every industry. And since we are only 7 years in it, we are not 35, 40 years in it. So it's very hard to see. So that is the reason why I'm optimistic. So number one, it's all the smartest people are going there. Smart things, amazing things are going to happen, and we are yet to see a lot of them eventuate. I can see some small signs of it in some places, which I can I can absolutely um, talk about. But the other thing is that it is requiring a lot less permission. And where I'm seeing the real use cases is that I have hired people in Africa, and like few different places in Africa, in Kenya, in Nigeria, and South Africa, three countries. And I think in Ghana I did hire a contractor and stuff. They all want to be paid just in a stable coin, USDC or a Bitcoin. They do not want to be paid in their currency. They do not want to be paid in US dollar.
Right.
And that is the fastest, easiest way to pay them. It is their government does not control their currencies, get hyperinflated to 1,000% sometimes a month. So this is the only preferred choice for them. They are not speculating. They don't have money to speculate. We in the developed world are speculating and trading and having fun with fear and greed, whereas they are using it just for real utility. So if the thing has utility, it's working there. And so the next level of
And I
innovation
agree
is
with
going
that.
to
I
come
agree with that.
from Southeast
I
Asia.
wanna
And
mention something else too before we skip this
yes.
point. And we are kind of working within a time constraint here, so we'll have to
Sorry.
move kind of quickly. But this is a very important point, and that is that there are people who are getting value out of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as currencies, and we don't want to. I don't want to skip over that. I think it's very important that that is happening. I think it's
Yes.
also important to recognize that, like you were mentioning earlier, it's still sorting itself out. We still don't know yet
Yes.
which currencies are going to survive, which ones are going to be in demise. We mentioned already a bunch of them have gone into demise, and that's true. That's going to continue to
Probably
happen.
while we are talking this, while we
Yeah.
finish this
Another
conversation,
one
we'll be
bites the
dead.
dust.
And
Yeah.
few new will be born. And that's it's just yeah.
That's the way that works.
Yeah.
So I think that deserves a lot of attention. The fact that, like you said, there are people in this world who are used to dealing with currencies that they can't trust, that just aren't reliable as currencies.
Yes.
Certainly not like the major currencies are. There's a reliability there that people have come to trust, but it is not true for all currencies around the world. And so that is fertile ground for something like a cryptocurrency to gain a foothold. I'm
Mm.
not saying that I'm ready to say, oh, well, that means a cryptocurrency is going to take over the world. I'm not ready to go that far yet.
Yeah, yeah,
But this is it. But this is an important point. I want to make sure we really
yeah.
touch on that.
And the fact that there's only um two things with Bitcoin. So in China, Bitcoin got banned a few months ago or some time ago,
Mhm,
but people still hold Bitcoin there. They can
mhm,
still take it in their USB key and take it out.
mhm.
There are still a lot of Bitcoin that used to be mined in China is still held in people's digital wallets and access keys, and the government cannot do a thing. Now if they want to take it out, if they want to immigrate to overseas, they just take that USB key or just take their file name, and they can go and access it somewhere else. So it is happening. So if you want an immutable, so Bitcoin is not the only one. They could hold it in Ethereum, they could hold it in other ones. So
Sure.
there is still an ability to transfer it, to take it out of the country, or to go somewhere else. If you want to, you can still hold it. Problem happens, a lot of people store money in centralized exchanges, which is nothing more than taking the money from government and handing it to us, to an individual or a centralized company to hold, which is what happened just a few days ago. Celsius was in yesterday pretty much was in centralized exchange, and a lot of people started taking money out of it, just like a bank. The run to the bank sort of a thing
Right.
happened.
Run on the
Rumors
bank.
spread. Run, yes. In in regular, if the bank is backed by a government, then the government goes and rescues us with taxpayer money. Here there is no government to rescue it, so it just folds. So if the run on the bank happens, so it was a bank where people lend and put money on cryptocurrency on interest. So if you do indulge in those sort of things, then there are risks that people should be aware of. But if you hold it in your own digital wallet, in your own safe, and you take it somewhere, you can just use it. You can keep out of the system the day you log back in,
Well,
or
within
you want to
limits. I mean,
transfer.
it's not like you're separated from those systems just because you keep it in your own wallet. I mean, they're like you point out in that particular case, entire cryptocurrencies are failing. So yeah, you could have it in your crypto wallet, but it's also not worth anything anymore. So you didn't actually get directly burned by the bank, but you got indirectly burned.
So what about a stable coin which is pegged to the US dollar? So
Wait,
then,
well, but now all of a sudden, now you're getting a whole bunch of libertarians mad at you because their whole point was, well, we got to separate this from the U.S. dollar.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I don't care about libertarians. I care about
Well,
utility.
okay, I'm with
Yeah.
you on that.
Yeah. I don't care about libertarianism or Republicans or Democrats or anything. I'm into technology. I'm not into politics, and I neither do
I
I
doubt that.
intend to go into that. But I
Well, but
do.
it does have an important point attached to
Yes.
it, and that is that um, there are a number of attraction points, I guess I'll call them, selling points that have led
Yes.
people to want to be involved in cryptocurrencies. And as those selling points prove themselves to be inadequate to the task, that's where you get more and more skepticism. And to
Yeah.
me, that is the real unanswered question where all crypto is concerned. Not
Yeah.
in terms of whether it's useful to have a blockchain technology that becomes a database. That certainly has all kinds of potential to it. I think we can both
Yeah.
agree on that very easily. But when we're talking about currency specifically, it's
Oh,
very
yeah. Yeah.
problematic. And I don't
Yes.
care what kind of currency you're talking about, including currency you're paying to guys in Africa.
Yeah.
Any currency that is tied to the whims of fate, so to speak, where what happens over here ends up devaluing your currency over there,
Yeah.
that's going to have a negative psychological effect. And that's the part that I think is not being addressed by almost anyone in the crypto world. I feel like I'm like a lone voice on this one, saying, "Hey guys, I get the motivation, but until you address this, it's not going to go away. It's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. It has to be addressed. You have to address the psychology of money. And if you don't,
Yeah.
you're not going to attain the status of money. And that's the
Yeah.
bottom
But is
line.
there does it even need to attain the status of money? As long
Sure.
as it solves problem, why not? It's like if it solves a problem, like in the gaming industry,
Well,
which
what you
I've
have
worked
here is
in.
a catch 22. You're saying, well, as long as it solves the problem. Yeah, but the problem is I want to have a stable currency. That's the problem. So if the problem is basically undermining itself, is the problem really solved? What you're arguing is, well, certain benefits are being attained through
Yes.
the development of technology. And I agree, certain benefits are being attained.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as saying that a currency is growing. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
It needs to be
Yeah.
separated. We have kind of blurred boundaries in our world today, saying,
Yes.
well, if it's associated with cryptocurrency because it's blockchain and good things are happening in blockchain, therefore cryptocurrency is here to stay. And I say, bull. You're blurring the logic here. Just
Yeah.
because one part of it's good doesn't mean the other part's going to work. A does not lead to B. It doesn't work that
Yeah.
way. That's not the way logic works, for goodness sake. So
Yeah.
that's my problem with
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. For me, it's like it does not have to be currency. It does not have to replace the central banks. It does not have to replace the government. It does not have to replace any of that. It does not have to replace taxation. For me, it is that does it provide utility? And in the gaming industry, it does provide a utility, and it will be used more and more. That's the one application I can see because I work in that industry. I can see that. I can describe to you in 2 minutes how it works if you want. If you still have got time, how much time have we got?
We have about 30 seconds, so I'm afraid that's not going to work.
That's not
Unfortunately,
gonna
we
work.
got
Yeah.
started a little bit late today, so we didn't get our full
Yes.
hour in. But before we even part company, because we are running out of time here, let's find out a little bit more about how people can find out about you and your company. How can they learn more about what it is that the company is doing, especially people who are interested in the gaming industry? They're going to be interested in that. So tell people how to find you.
Yeah, sure. So I work for Moonstream.to, and we build sort of building blocks for Web3 games. In the last sort of 8 months, we've had over $3 billion in transactions using our platform. We do about a million plus, sort of our platform does about over a million plus transactions a month. That's what my company does. Apart from that, for fun, I run a podcast. It's called Web3 with Sam Kamani. You can search it on any platform. And if you work in gaming or blockchain gaming or NFT gaming, then reach out to me. I'd be very happy to answer any of your questions or even have a conversation. All my DMs are open on LinkedIn or Twitter. You can just search for me as Sam Kamani. Yeah, so that's about it. And look, I really enjoyed Walt, our conversation. It was so good to talk with someone who's knowledgeable, open-minded, and has a really sort of a strong point of view and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and for sharing the very interesting stuff that you're doing. We didn't really get into what your company is doing in depth. We kind of touched on it
Yes.
very, very superficially, but I think anybody who is tuned in and listening can recognize, yeah, there's something cool going on there. So we will be
Yeah.
watching. We will be paying attention to see how well your
Absolutely.
company and other companies like you are doing. So
Yeah.
thank you once again for being on the program, and thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.